Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. This is the astrology report for the new moon that is happening today, July 9th, 2021. We are looking at new moon coming in exact at 18 degrees. 1 minute in Cancer, the sun and moon in a conjunction at I'm looking at my notes here, 9:17 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we're going to talk about today's new moon. We're going to look at the astrology of the weekend in detail, of course, and we'll look at the major themes that are going to be leading up to the full moon, which is going to be a full moon in Aquarius, meaning our sun will be in Leo. And that will be on the 23rd of July, 2021. So, man, you can tell, I'm all about being transparent here. I'm on this ride with the rest of you, of course, and I'm so sorry about the lighting. One day. And it's really important that you are also listening as well as viewing, and we'll go into the chart and we can mitigate this terrible lighting situation when we are looking at the chart. But man, I am definitely tired, and I know a lot of people are exhausted. They're kind of just like spun out. And I'm not tired in a way, personally, I'm not tired in a way that is like I've just overworked. It's really now this dark moon in Cancer right now is having us really just kind of settle into the container, isn't it? We've done the last week or so has been really intense. There's been, I posted on social media about my read of the last week or so in terms of the solar flares that have been coming in conjunction, our sun in conjunction with the star Sirius at the same time, not really much of a buffer from the Earth's magnetic field. So we're getting the full impact of this solar information, right? What is light other than information? And so we've been taking on these codes. We've been getting the upgrade on an internal level, and it's just really put us kind of through the ringer. And yesterday, and the 7th too, it really peaked. And now as the moon is in her darkest moments before she comes into a conjunction with the sun and then begins her new cycle, we're really being invited in a lot of ways to just settle very deeply into this moment and not really exert a lot of outward energy, but to maintain a sense of stillness and calmness on the very core of who we are. And if that is very much of the Cancerian archetype, is stabilizing into the core of who we are, where we belong, what sustains us, and where we draw our personal power from. It truly is our root system. If we want to think of ourselves as a plant, for instance, that's really how I learned how to that was really my full introduction into reading astrology, was actually working with plants and plant medicine in terms of growing and cultivating and having a relationship with that cycle of plants. It just so beautifully flows with our own cycle. So let's see if I can get this lighting here. Nope, it's not going to work. Okay. So if you're feeling tired, if you're feeling kind of just burnt, right? Like you've reached a point of you can't give anymore, you don't have anything left, you're not even really excited about anything. It's because things have really peaked out, and now we're in this moment right now, again, to cultivate this stillness and this calmness amidst what will be, it's just going to get harder, my friends. And this is not doom and gloom. This is not focusing on the negative. This is being very realistic about the path ahead of us. And this new moon in Cancer, not only is it in conjunction still with Sirius, I mean, we're within a 4-degree orb of conjunction with fixed star Sirius with this new moon. It represents a sanctification. And what does that mean? It means that this relationship, whatever it is between the polarity within us, right? The sun and the moon, our emotional landscape, how we feel. And I'm not saying so much how we feel, like what are our emotions, how we feel, right? How we feel the energy, how we feel the energy move, our intuition, our psychic impressions, however you want to wrap your head around it, how we feel is represented by the moon and her transit. So whether or not you believe she's an artificial satellite or not, it doesn't really matter anymore, because the moon is still responsible for life on this planet, and is the mediator and the magnet in its own way of the water on this planet. And since we ourselves are made mostly of fluid and water, it makes sense that the moon also is pulling on our own internal feeling-based landscape, which is the water within us. You know, it's interesting. Water is an incredible electrical conductor and is absolutely necessary for communication, for the transportation of all kinds of things throughout the body. And it also is about our spiritual connection as well. And so these two polarities, right? The sun, our expression of who we are, the outward expression, that undevotion, or that devotional, unconditional, giving of ourselves, that is the highest expression of Leo, and the sun, for instance, is it's being sanctified with this new moon. So whatever it is that is being made holy within you, and specifically the two polarities of ourselves being brought together into some sort of productive alchemical relationship of fire and water, whatever that is representing to you, and specifically who is sanctifying it for you, is going to really determine a lot how this lunar cycle unfolds. So we are coming to the very, very end. Like I said, this dark moon in Cancer, she's at home in Cancer. She's very powerful right now. So the best thing you can do is exert or sit in this stillness and calmness and this void in some ways, because this is where we are going to create the space. Remember, we talked about this yesterday with our with the intuitive reading. Create the sacred space within you. Prepare yourselves for the eventual growth. And when we come into a new moon every month, it is an opportunity to plant some sort of seed within us of our growth. So it's okay if you just kind of take a breather here and not continue to exert energy you may not really have. Now, I also posted on social media about my vision and my channeling experience with the Syrians yesterday. And, you know, the Agent Smiths of the Matrix are scrambling. And this is why I say that we are in for a whole new level of challenge as we go into this month. And so this is why it's important that we are very clear with ourselves what it is and who it is, what is sanctifying this productive relationship within us as we bring these two polar aspects together and create something new. So it really has a lot to do with our integrity and who is sanctifying this. Now, this will be exemplified in a much more obvious relationship when Venus and Mars come into a conjunction in Leo within this first 2 weeks, the first half of this lunar cycle, leading up to the full moon, which will be a sun in Leo and a moon in Aquarius. And so again, it's going to be full illumination of what needs to go, what has culminated as a result of this sanctified relationship. What is it about our everyday reality that we can make into a sacred pact or a sacred union or something that is sanctified and made holy? So we know that Venus is going to meet Mars in Leo, right? Leo, the release of that divine energy, the solar combustion that is within us, that moves within us, the release of the Kundalini. And I know that's a real trigger for people, and it requires that we become the humble, purified vessel if we want to utilize that energy at our highest, right? Where people get trapped is when they don't take that energy and apply it to that Virgo nature, which is the other side of the mercurial Hermes Gemini archetype, right? Hermes and Mercury rule Gemini, it rules Virgo. You can't separate these two aspects. And when you just focus on the light coming in, the knowledge and the information and the gnosis, without the humbling, purified, service-oriented, down-to-earth nature, right? This is where people get trapped. This is where people get trapped, and they think that they are operating with knowledge and gnosis, and they are, but they are trapped in a false light context. So Venus and Mars will come together, and like I said, this new moon sanctification that we're going to be experiencing today as a moment of activation, of planting that seed in the ground, so to speak, within us, will be exemplified, will be combust in some ways when Venus and Mars come together at 20 degrees Leo, actually, which is all about, it's a ritualization of the power of our natural energy. So keep in mind that it's not just us, people that are engaged in this type of work or receiving this transmission, listening or watching this report. It's everybody that is here right now that is impacted and will somehow utilize these transits. So it's not, and like I said, the agent Smiths and the Matrix are scrambling because we did reach a tipping point. We did get a huge upgrade that is allowing us to utilize our higher consciousness to resonate and to change the resonance within us, which will then change the resonance outside of us as well. It was very potent. And now it's up to us to keep that within us, right? Sanctify that, make it holy, make it sacred, and exemplify that in your life. And when Venus and Mars come together, this is going to be a good opportunity to really activate that through your passion, through your devotion, through an unconditional giving of yourself, rather than to hoard that energy for some sort of ego-based agenda. And it is absolutely essential that in order to manifest this and walk through this time without any fear, you have got to have been facing your own shadow and seeing where your own pitfalls are, looking at yourself in the mirror, acknowledging your own darkness so that you are able to see it in others, in the world around you, in the information being presented to you, because all of the scrambling to keep this matrix in, not even to keep it intact. We all know, regardless of where you find yourself, that it's on its way out. It's really about the organic versus AI timeline. It's really about that false presentation of the awakening that is leading people off track. And it actually makes a difference. It really does. It's become so clear to me how damaging it's been for people to have such a strong influence when they haven't acknowledged their own shadow and really dug deep into themselves and looked in the mirror, right? And really dug deep. And it's hard. We want to be comfortable. We want to take care of ourselves and our families, right? We want to make a living, right? We want to we want to bring into our field what we feel that we deserve, and there's more than enough to go around. And where people get stuck is, and this is a conversation that has been going on in the New Age spiritual community for so long, and really any spiritual community, this conversation about resources and what abundance means and charging for services and all of that stuff. So, I mean, these are all things that are going to be playing out over time. It's not going to wrap itself up anytime soon. This is years of unfolding that we are going to be working with. But what I will say is that we are entering, because there was a huge, very massive upgrade that happened and a quickening, right? I posted that also in the chat on Telegram, the Carrie K video that was only a couple minutes long, but really just explained it very well. that we are reaching this quickening, and not everybody has consented to take this next step, and that's okay, but it will, unfold still, and we have to be ready for what's going to come forward. So we are going to look at this weekend's astrology, so we can kind of get an idea of where we can utilize these frequencies to our, I wouldn't say advantage, but for the advantage of humanity. And it's important that we realize that it's going to get more difficult, and how we can walk through this time without fear, but also without being blindsided or, being, what's the word I'm looking for? We don't want to be unrealistic about what's coming, and thinking that if we just ignore the negativity, that is the same thing as keeping a high vibe. I mean, we have to be real about what's coming, and also acknowledge it, so that we can, in fact, know the difference, and also maintain our own resonance with that highest version of the awakening that we can. So I'm going to start sharing the chart with you. The other thing that is going to be happening during this first half of this lunar cycle is that Chiron is going to station retrograde. So you think you're frustrated now? You think you're frustrated now? You think that you're ready for things to happen now? Just wait. Because when things go retrograde, it's been my experience that they become way more obvious, right? And they become something we pay way more attention to, because it appears from our vantage point that they are moving backwards, and it's an illusion, right? It's a matter of perspective. It's because our rotation around the sun, the speed of our rotation around the sun is different than that which is seeming to move backwards. It's an optical illusion. But so we pay attention to it more, and we're like, wow, that's moving backwards. So just be ready that Chiron stationing retrograde is joining all of these other outer planets that are now retrograde: Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto, and then Chiron. Mercury is moved out of its post-retrograde shadow. We talked about that too. And as much as that is getting to a real mastery point in terms of weaving together all of the things, and really, coming to acknowledge and conceptualize all of the best and brightest of our reality and what we have access to. When Mercury moves into Cancer, again, this is the time of decision, and this is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. So there is a lot of points coming up in the next 2 weeks, leading to a full moon in Aquarius, which is, what we set intentions for sanctification now. And what happens with Venus and Mars conjunct in Leo, 20 degrees Leo, right? The ritualization and the acknowledgement of the power of the natural energies to create and to give life. I don't want to say worshiping the sun, but because that's not exactly the right way to put it, but that's kind of, it's more about revering and acknowledging the sun and what it has to give us, right? And that's not literal. This is about our passion and our expression moving through us, being, coming together with the divine feminine, divine masculine of Venus and Mars coming together. When we get to this full moon, those experiences that represent our expression, our creative expression and our passion, though it will spread to the collective, and it will illuminate fully within us the challenge, right? And there will be things that we don't anticipate, and this is why it's important that we anticipate that we don't anticipate what's coming, right? For everything that humanity is able to create, nature can take away in a hot second. And that is going to be shown to us very clearly with this full moon. And so being prepared for that and being the eye of the storm, so to speak, is going to prepare us for that moment. So let's start looking at the chart start looking at the chart and getting an idea of what this weekend actually looks like for us here on planet Earth, all right? And we're feeling it. I know many people are feeling it. And it's exciting and it's very, we can see what's coming, but we also have to be very realistic about also there is no in our universe, there is no action without some sort of counteraction, right? So excuse me. Thank you. All right, guys. So we're looking at today as our moon is in her darkest moments in her home territory of Cancer. So, like I said, these balsamic moon times are really not good times to try to activate anything, to try to necessarily force anything, to be very active. It's a really good time every month, and especially in Cancer, right? This is where we're able to draw on our deepest core, right? Getting into the void of space that is permanent, the darkness that is permanent, that is the space in which life is able to be created, right? You can't have light without a darkness in which for the light to fill, right? This is, I think, where other people get stuck on the other end of things, that they don't acknowledge their own darkness within, and that darkness and evil don't necessarily have to be the same thing, but you also have to be aware of what happens when it's just space, right? Anything can fill that space, and we have to be mindful of that too. So with the dark moon in Cancer, you can really feel the energy start to just very strongly pull us down into the core of who we are, okay? And again, it means that the moon is going to also come into conjunction with fixed star Sirius, and this is the territory that the moon is at home in. So this is really strong, very, very strong. And people use this type of transit very specifically for their ritual. And we have to be aware of that too, that not everybody is looking at these transits in the same way, and they are not utilizing them in the same way. So it's important that we are very real with ourselves and what it is that we are here to, what kind of space we want to be providing for something to be created, right? So this is the current transits, and one thing I will point out for today is that asteroid Juno is in fact now in conjunction with fixed star Antares, and so there's going to be a lot of drama, right? It's really starting to heighten, but a lot of drama about betrayal, a lot of a drama about our contractual obligations, what it means to be an influencer, for instance, what it means to be responsible for another, what it means to be loyal, right? What it means to be in close association and contractually obligated to other people, and how that our impact is inseparable from our influence is inseparable from the impact that it has on the whole of the relationship. And as I've talked about many times now, when Antares, or when Juno now, especially coming into conjunction with Antares, the star Antares is the heart of the Scorpion, right? Are we going to be able to feel the sting and really hold and not succumb to the poison? Are we going to succumb to the poison, right? And it's going to be too much to handle. I feel like that is going to really surface itself now that asteroid Juno is coming into a conjunction with Antares. And if you are familiar with Greek and Roman mythology, which is what a lot of this astrology is based on archetypally, is that, Juno is the wife of Zeus, right? And for better and for worse, they are linked together. And she often displayed her envy and her jealousy and her rage when he constantly stepped out on her, and she would do things that would sabotage whatever he was doing, or specifically sabotage the women that he was engaged with, who in a lot of ways didn't even realize what was happening, but she still targeted them anyway because she was feeling the impact of his influence on their relationship, even though his influence was betraying her at every turn. So let's be real here about how people can respond to these situations when it becomes obvious to them that they are being betrayed. Are you going to hold this the heart of the Scorpion? Are you going to hold this truth and not let it corrupt you? Are you going to hold this truth and not let it poison you? That's a real question. And keep in mind that this asteroid Juno also retrogrades, so it's more obvious to us, and it's going to pass back over this point when she does in fact go direct. Okay, so this is not the last time we're going to be addressing these issues when it comes to Juno and Antares. It's just way more obvious to us right this moment, and really internalized, and we really can't not pay attention to it because of this retrograde. So this is where it really starts, is with and you don't see it on this chart, but the moon in a, as we kind of go back here, the moon is going, yeah, here we go. The moon early this morning, late last, in the middle of the night, the further west you go, is making this connection here in a quincunx to Juno, right? Because the moon at 10 degrees Cancer is that diamond. Ooh, there's that diamond template again. The diamond template that is being cut and shaped by the use of like heat and a grinding tool, right? It's not comfortable, but we have to, this quincunx is a beautiful moment. As much as they don't seem to fit together, in fact, the opportunity to adjust ourselves is substantial in this moment, right? Is that what we are experiencing, as painful as it is, and the betrayal, right? And Lee Harris talked about this in his July update, or his energy update, the deception energy, and what that's going to feel like and what that's going to bring out in people. This moment here, this quincunx, is, if we can see it for what it is, we can readjust ourselves and our expectations, and acknowledge that we are in fact being cut into shape, as much as it's uncomfortable and the pressure and the heat of the situation. But remember, diamond is, number one, just all carbon atoms. So it's not technically organic, but it is all carbon. So it's not toxic to us, not like the sting of the Scorpio. And it represents us. It represents our scaffolding, and the ability to hold incredible amounts of heat and pressure is what a diamond is able to do based on its atomic structure. And it has a piezoelectric effect, right? It doesn't conduct electricity. It transfers heat and energy across its surface. So again, we can acknowledge, we can see this and really see this symbol as a way to experience this in terms of our how we feel, our emotional, feeling-based landscape, our intuition, and our deep intuitive nature. So this is where it started. And you can see how even that pressure and that heat can really just kind of force you into this stasis moment of just like, okay, I can't even anymore. I'm just going to allow this process to be crafted by some sort of master craftsman. And who is that master craftsman? Well, I would venture to say it's Source, right? I mean, that's the highest. And you can find different ways to characterize that if that's what you need. And the codes coming in from Sirius are very substantial as well. It's all about how we use these things. So where does it go next? Well, then it also, this becomes, so loud, a quincunx to Saturn. So here, another adjustment moment here. Saturn retrograde in Aquarius, and then comes into, right after that, is going to square Chiron as it comes into its conjunction with Sirius almost directly. So if you remember, the sun was making all of these same aspects not that long ago. And so we were really expressing ourselves through this, right? Finding our passion and expression through all of these connections to Saturn and to Chiron. And now that the moon is passing here, we're really embodying it. It's really something that we're feeling internally. It's really something that we are getting a much deeper internalized experience of, which I think is really preparing us for what will be a new moon that sanctifies this relationship of expression and how we feel, right? The yang of the sun energy and the yin of the moon energy. right? If we can express ourselves through it and we can feel something very deeply about it as well, we can then bring these two aspects together into some sort of spiritual alchemy that is a seed that we plant, right? And so these are all, like I said, these are all aspects that the sun crossed over last weekend when it was in the same position. So now Saturn has since moved into the degree, earlier. It's retrograded back into the earlier degree, but Chiron is still in the same place. So again, we are acknowledging here that there is latent worth when we see the deeper meaning in things within us, and we can still acknowledge with Saturn that everybody's exactly where they need to be. We're all equal in the eyes of the divine source, but we're also in a natural state of progression in our consciousness, and everybody has their own contracts. Everybody has their own position on this stairway, so to speak. And again, we have to adjust ourselves because Saturn, again, retrograde, it's very obvious. It's a very strong boundary. It's crystallized things to the point where we can't not pay attention to it. And the moon is in this quincunx here, as you can see, this green line that that shows us that even though we feel inside this, we feel and we know deeply that there is latent worth in every experience, and it's like a revelation in some ways. We will adjust ourselves in the face of a very, very stark reality, a stark boundary that Saturn provides, which is that even if we see the latent meaning and everything and the deeper meaning, and we have this internalized revelation in this moment, and we feel it for ourselves, we also have to acknowledge that it doesn't necessarily fit with the idea that everybody's in their own position, everybody is on their own level, and we're all going there together, but we're not all on the same level. And that's really making it hard to communicate with people. And in fact, it's really causing a lot of drama in certain ways because not everybody is looking at things in the same way. But we also can acknowledge that deep within us, we see that there is deeper meaning to all of this, and we can really stabilize ourselves through this process. And then it comes into a square. Oh boy, a square with Chiron. And we've talked about this square last time because this was on the 4th of July. That the square between the sun and Chiron was exact. And now the moon is coming around, and it's something we feel very deeply as well. And it's the power of our will to shape our character. We feel that very deeply, but what is going to force us to change because of these cross purposes is this deep wounding and the frustration of things not coming about as quickly as we think that they should, right? We want to immediately challenge the status quo and change it, right? Because that's part of the essence of Aries, right? Is that warrior energy that Mars rules Aries. And this warrior energy where it wants to force these things to happen right now. And it's been bringing up all of these old wounds, right? That Chiron represents, this collective wound, really. And the square here is we're going to, now that we expressed ourselves through it, we're going to still feel it very deeply now, that as much as we want to utilize the will in shaping our character, we're going to really bump up against, in a very significant way, this frustration and this, and what it triggers. So be mindful of that too as we go through today, because we are in fact being shaped by a lot of pressure at the moment. And but the thing about squares, these are where we grow the most, right? This is where we are challenged the most and we grow and change the most. So the moon here actually has a lot of ability to bring us back to our center, and how it's up to us to shift and change our own character based on our own will, as opposed to trying to change something outside of us. So, which is where we've been dealing with Chiron and Aries for how long now, right? That we keep being brought into this victim, and it's still here, and it's still going to be here. And like I said, Chiron moving retrograde, stationing retrograde very soon after this weekend. You think it's frustrating now, just wait, and it goes on both sides. Whatever it is you're trying to change immediately, and being frustrated about, it's going to come right up to the surface. So from here, the moon comes into a sextile with Uranus, and we've talked about how Uranus shifting into the next degree is like, it's time to put our heads down and brave the storm, right? Whatever that means for us. And we've gone from a time of finding our innovation and our futuristic perspective of humanitarianism, right, that Uranus represents, that collective third eye. We've gone from being revitalized by the natural world to now this next step that's like, okay, well, now it's time to bear down and really shelter ourselves in this next step. I hope we did revitalize ourselves. I hope we did make a connection in a transcendent way to the natural world, because that is what's going to carry us through. And so with the moon in a sextile, right, here's that sextile, that 60-degree angle that is an investment opportunity from both sides to harmonize, right? It's harmonious, but we have to learn, we have to invest what we've learned from our disappointment or our defeat or whatever. We have to invest it into these two aspects, invest them into each other to get the most out of it. And with the moon in Cancer, again, we can kind of, I don't want to say we can kind of relax, but there comes a point here where we're so we feel so protected and contained that we can really experience what amounts to a materialization of our spiritual nature, if that makes sense. The Sabian symbol is very interesting to me. It's a sumptuous dining hall. In a sumptuous dining hall, guests relax after partaking of a huge banquet. Well, I would say this huge banquet was this like intense week of Syrian light codes coming in, riding the solar wind that hasn't been buffered at all, coming in from our sun. And so we've taken in a lot. And so in this moment, we can kind of just sit back and let it digest, right? We can't just like eat a huge meal and then go on this like marathon, right? We have to let the energy of our body actually break down this, all of this, everything that we have consumed or taken on, especially in the last week. And so we can invest that into where Uranus is, and we can invest Uranus that is, disrupting the material world on a consistent basis in order to stimulate our own awakening. We can invest that energy as well into where the moon is, and realize that sometimes we can, we braving the storm by just kind of, I don't want to say waiting it out, but yeah, sometimes you do have to just wait it out, and bear down, and it's like putting your hat on, folding up your collar, and just like, okay, here it comes. You have to just kind of wait it out. And we can take this energy today and really apply it to each other and get the most out of it with this, before this new moon comes on. There's been so much coming in. So I'm very thankful for this opportunity. So I'm going to take full advantage of this moving into this new moon time. This is not easy for Aquarian rising people. Just so you know, this is your 6th house, right? And the 6th house is where we have to get our shit together. The 6th house is the Virgo house. It is the house of personal reconstitution and purification and disciplining our body, disciplining our routines and our habits, doing the self-care that we really know is actually going to train us to be of full service to humanity. So, and Uranus is the ruling planet of Aquarius. So it's just something, how you can apply these things to your definitive chart. It's not easy right now. So Neptune is in a sextile to asteroid Ceres. She's also in Taurus over here, and so one day I will upgrade, I promise, to Astro Gold or Solar Fire or something to that nature, and then I will be able to put all of the asteroids onto the chart without it looking like a total disaster, because that's what it looks like in other charts. So, but what I will say is that Neptune and Ceres are in a sextile with each other. So again, the same things. Neptune retrograde has been so, bringing us back around to really focusing on what are our limitations and what are our potential What are the possibilities for us to really fulfill our dharma, like really get us focused on what we're here to actually do? And Neptune has been like clearing the fog away in its retrograde and kind of like pulling away the veil in a way that's we have to see where the illusion is now, and or we're just completely ignoring it, like completely ignoring it, in which case we're not being realistic with ourselves. We're not acknowledging where our limitations are so that we can actually focus in on what we're here to do. But this sextile to Ceres, right? Asteroid Ceres is the goddess of the grain and agriculture, right? She is the giver of the sustenance that provides life to all animals on this planet, right? Or any animal that's, consuming plants and grains, right? And a grain is just a plant. So she is in this position, getting very close to the Pleiades, might I add, that she is in a sextile, right? Again, that 60-degree angle. We can really, and this degree is very interesting because on the surface it has to do with like this really aggressive nature to survive. But really it points to the idea that is part of being, that is something that we have to acknowledge as being part of our natural components, right? We are natural beings. We are in a 3D world with a very material reality that we have to survive in, and it gives us kind of it allows us to that survival instinct to really kick on. And with Ceres here again, in terms of our sustenance, right? We have to protect our sustenance. We have to honor that which sustains us with Ceres, and not be afraid to protect that or to allow this. Now, this is not to say that we should let that aggression take over, and that's really important to consider. It's more about acknowledging that our survival is something that we don't necessarily activate with our minds. It's instinctual. And so when it comes to our, the planet herself, right, the actual seasons and the cycles and the growing cycle that she represents, she will survive regardless, right? And she will do what she needs to do. And again, this sextile directly to Neptune that is just dissolving all illusion right now in its retrograde and really showing us our limitations and also what our strengths are and how we can like really apply that to what we're here to do. This is a really important sextile today that we can really benefit from, but it has to, again, invest these energies into each other. We want to survive, but if it's blind, right, and it's blind aggression to protect that which sustains us without being applied to this really strong collective need to fulfill our dharma, then it's just aggressive survival. And you can see also that like really making its way to the surface right now in a number of ways. And then we come into, by the end of today, we come into our full moon, right? It's going to be 18 degrees in 1 minute in conjunction here. And then right after that, Mercury in Gemini comes into a square with Pallas Athena in Neptune or in Pisces, right? And so we have this mutable square, and this degree that Mercury finds itself in at this moment here in this square is about weaving together all of the things that we have accumulated in our knowledge and our technical skill, our practicality, what we've learned, right? Gemini, it's knowledge, gnosis. We pull it all together and weave it into a beautiful new melody, right? It's the first mockingbird of spring. That is oh no, that's not true, but that is coming next. This is about bankruptcy, my bad. This is the degree before that, where we are acknowledging that society gives us an out, right? When we are overburdened by too much of our own knowledge and too much of what we've accumulated in this realm, society acknowledges that there's a way to wipe the slate clean. And again, this is in a square to Pallas Athena. The moon was here not that long ago, just 2 days ago, and we talked about it. And where Pallas Athena is, the goddess of strategy, and wisdom in war, because we are at war, my friends. Just because it's not bombs dropping doesn't mean there's no war. I mean, it's an information war. It is a war of our for our consciousness. So this moment here with Mercury, if we can allow ourselves to release the burden of everything that is accumulated so far that is holding us back in some ways, which is really, again, it's going to force a change, because the strategy here in some ways is to see everything, to reap what we've sown, and to hold space for it, and to see that everything we have sown and cultivated is here in abundance. And so Mercury, on the other hand, is like, well, the mind and the ability to conceptualize reality is to let it all go. So again, this is going to really challenge us, but we're going to have the opportunity to grow considerably in this moment. And this is also when the moon comes into its conjunction with the sun, and this part of ourselves is really being sanctioned, right? This productive inner relationship within us, that we're going to grow over the course of this next lunar cycle, right? We're just planting the seed with this new moon. We're not growing. It hasn't cracked open yet. Like, it's just the seed being planted. And so it's just about setting intention in this moment here in order to lead to the growth of something beautiful. And that's going to be, like I said, it's going to really be exemplified and brought out into reality, I think, with Venus and Mars in a conjunction over here in Leo within the next 2 weeks. So when we look at tomorrow, so this is just today, the new moon. So we look at tomorrow, the 10th, and the moon moves from Cancer into Leo. We do see that. And so what's that mean? The moon is going to trine Neptune. And so really structurally supporting this idea of really focalizing our energy and our feeling and our attention on what we're here to do. It does come into an opposition at the same, right after with Pluto, retrograde Pluto, right? And this is... moon in an opposition to Pluto, right? There's already so much tension there between our feelings, how we feel, what's going on internally. Our personal experience of it is feeling a lot of tension with Pluto, which is our soul's final word on how we transform, and it's in Capricorn. So this opposition here is really going to challenge us, because again, we're going to get to a point here where we've sanctified and we've come to this moment here, and then we're going to start really trying to transfer this knowledge in a way internally. Like, we're going to try to it's like we want the comfort and the luxury of being protected as we, enjoy our intellectual, how do I say this? We want the comfort and the luxury, right, of being able to engage with our intellectual enjoyment in a protected, safe environment. The opposition to Pluto, though, is really where we're going to be challenged again, because Pluto is there's no safety here, right? Everything is pulled away, and it's the deepest, most repressed feelings with Pluto. So it's important that we realize that in all oppositions, of course, we want to find our fulcrum, right? We want to find the balance to make the most out of this energy, right? Instead of getting pulled in one direction or the other, or pulling so hard that it snaps. We want to find the balance point, that fulcrum, kind of like a seesaw, right? Because that's, the seesaw back and forth. If you find that balance point, you are going to be in that 0 point, which is the Fool, right? That beginner's mind, that infinite possibility in the middle of these things. So it's not to say that we can't enjoy what we are learning and enjoy the luxurious surroundings of a safe and stable environment in order to learn these things. It's just that Pluto is pulling us into a much deeper, much more destructive position in terms of the institutions of our reality. It is, Capricorn is the material matrix, and Pluto is destroying it, and has been since 2008 when it first came into Capricorn. So it doesn't mean that we can't have this. It's just we have to find the balance point of this in order to really make the most of it in this opposition. And this can have a lot of impact emotionally, with really strong repressed feelings, that shadow part of ourselves that we haven't acknowledged, but is really our power of transformation if we do acknowledge it, right? If we acknowledge our shadow. What is Pluto but the ruler of Scorpio? That is where we see ourselves fully, is in the context of our communion and cooperation. And so the moon in Cancer is also very powerful. So there's going to be a lot of tug here, push and pull, a lot of tension amongst these, our own inner emotions, and the destruction on a soul level based on the destruction of the material reality around us, right? So that's really powerful as well. The moon comes around to sextile Vesta. We talked about Vesta yesterday. She is now giving us the green light to start coming out and actually putting all this training into practice. Like, we have to come out and actually light the candles on the altar now. And the sextile with this position of the moon that is going to be coming in exact tomorrow in the afternoon here, late morning, early afternoon, later in the day, depending on where you are, kind of this midday area on Saturday, is that it's going to be this very cathartic moment here where the storm rages through the canyon, and it is the canyon that actually is what protects and sustains us. But we have to come into a confrontation with this social upheaval, and it's going to be something we feel very deeply. And maybe it's our own social upheaval, maybe it's our own karmic confrontation. But if we apply that to where Vesta is, and vice versa, we're really going to be able to step forward as the upgraded version that we are after all this training and discipline and reflection as well. So there is a real opportunity here with this sextile from a Cancer moon over to Vesta in Virgo. And remember, Virgo represents the Vestal Virgins. They are the priestesses of Vesta. So she is in the sign now that is representing her priestesses, her crew of us who have committed their entire lives and their energy and their service to the sustainment of the community. That is the Virgo energy, okay? And from here, again, moon is going to trine Pallas Athena, whereas Mercury was in a square. The moon is going to come around and trine, right? There's that 120-degree angle, very structurally sound and supported. Not much that we have to do for these two to balance themselves out. And this degree is an inner rebirth by accepting the deep natural values within us, right? It's like returning to nature almost, that this moon in Cancer position represents. And again, when we return to nature, when we feel this inner rebirth as a result of this, it's the strategy here is it's like when we come to acknowledge everything that has been, it had to be this way, right? We have sown and cultivated, and now we have to, the light of a full moon is shining on everything that has grown in our garden, right? And so applied to this position of the moon is in a trine, right? We don't have to do much. It's just going to allow for this inner rebirth, right? Returning to these natural values, because it really depends what it is that is grown in our garden and the quality of it in terms of utilizing a strategy. And we've had to let it grow. I mean, it had to be this way. It had to come to fruition, and that is the strategy. And from that strategy, it can be applied directly in a very supportive way to this inner rebirth that we all could experience, okay? There's so much potential here in this weekend to prepare for what lies ahead. So we move past that and we know that the moon comes now into Leo. And so this is where it's going to start heating up again, right? And the moon comes into Leo. We start feeling very much like expressing ourselves, our passion. We are going to allow this, the water within us to be heated up by the sun, right? And this is an incredible alchemical moment as well, with the moon representing our inner waters meeting the light of the sun. So this comes into a quincunx with Jupiter almost immediately, Jupiter in retrograde in Pisces. And this is again another opportunity to adjust ourselves, because our personal experience of everything that's going to come about as a result of this new moon, and what we are learning and what we are coming to realize about ourselves and how we feel and our deeper intuition, it's going to spread. We're going to want to spread it. It's like the blood pumps, or the heart pumps the blood, and then it moves through the body very, very rapidly, and goes to all the systems, right? And so we're going to feel the spread of this initial like burst of energy, or this initial like blood rushing. It's going to spread throughout the whole system, throughout the whole collective. And again, Jupiter in Pisces at this degree is about the caution needed and the protection that is necessary when there are no more boundaries left. It's about psychic protection. It is about empathic protection as well. And with Jupiter here in this retrograde, just expanding and expanding, it's like it becomes less easy to hide, right? And this is it's going to require us to adjust ourselves. These two things are not really going to fit together as the moon moves into Leo on Saturday. When we come to Sunday, right, when we come into Sunday, which is technically, you can see that we come into, this is the very end of Saturday, and then we come into Sunday. So the moon will be in Leo all day, and this is when Mercury moves into Cancer, okay? Let me look at my notes here. The moon then comes into a trine to asteroid, so it's going to start transiting along the way, and the first thing it does is trine asteroid Juno in conjunction with Antares, and the south node over here in Sagittarius is going to be in a trine. And this is, again, this is a moment here where we can be reborn, right? And be exalted as we successfully pass through some sort of dark night of the soul. And the dark night of the soul is going to be a lot about this Antares meeting Juno, the betrayal, the sting of reality, the sting of deception, and how we have handled it. And then the moon in a trine to this is going to be this really beautiful moment where we actually are able to come out of this successfully. Have we managed this whole process up to this point without being taken over by it? And find redemption, right? Find redemption for ourselves, and allow this process to unfold for other people too, right? There's an exaltation that comes as a result of our strength and our faith being tested. And it's going to be as the result of coming to terms with the deception, the betrayal, and how people have abused their position and our trust in them, okay? So the moon comes along right after that and is in a trine to the south node, like I said, sextile to the north node. And so this just kind of keeps going and gives us, reminds us that as our consciousness is starting to, as that blood keeps moving through us, as our consciousness is raising, as the Kundalini is rising, as we are becoming more aware, and the solar fire is building and building and building and swinging around, our consciousness swinging around like a rope swing. We are, in fact, able to anchor that swing onto a very strong tradition in some ways. And this will allow us, we can invest this again into this North Node energy, which is taking us into new territory, okay? Just because we're going into new territory doesn't mean there isn't some sort of tradition or quite literally some sort of oak tree that is going to provide the stability for our individual consciousness to start swinging and feeling that exaltation. So by Sunday, things are really heating up. This is when Mercury comes into Cancer at the same time, okay, on Sunday. Now, this is where decisions, right, in our minds and our knowledge and our information, this is a point of decision, right? This is the hour of decision where we raise our flag. We have a radical reorientation in terms of our allegiance, and we make a decision about where we're going to stand. And it's going to be in the way we communicate. It's going to be what we say, what we express. It's going to have to do with our knowledge and our learning and our immediate environment too, right? The way we conceptualize reality has a lot to do with Mercury's movement, okay? So this is also part of Sunday while the moon is moving through Leo, comes into an opposition to Saturn. This is going to be hard. This is going to be really hard, right? Because while Saturn is providing that very clear boundary that everybody is exactly where they need to be, regardless that we're all going there together, we are in different places about it. The moon, how we feel is like we just want to have a party, right? We just want to let go of this rigid social expectation. And this is this opposition, if we can really find the balance point of this, there's a lot here that we can pull on, right? There's a lot of the potential energy we can draw from if we find this midpoint on this opposition. From there, the moon comes into a trine to Chiron, and the same basic thing here, that Venus and Mars had the same opposition to Saturn, and now the moon is in that position, just like how they had a trine to Chiron, and now the moon is in that position. Right? Our ability to rock ourselves and be able to move rhythmically but very calmly, quieted mind and calmness as we acknowledge that we've been through this before, right? And we don't have to be pulled into the drama either way, that we can acknowledge our own rhythm within this, right? And that is where it's rhythm, right? It's rhythm. It's oscillation. That is what a wave pattern is a rhythm. That is what frequency means. How many wave patterns are within a certain point of time? That is what frequency is. So we want our wave pattern to be calm and collected and oscillating in rhythm in order to build energy. And again, in a trine to Chiron, this is, before it goes retrograde, this is really important in order to heal those wounds, to calm ourselves, to not feed the frustration, okay? And from there, the moon comes into a square with Chiron by the end of Sunday. And this has come about with Venus and Mars already. And as much as we are feeling like rolling down the street on a parade float, being like, hey, I am able to, really influence the collective through my own dramatization of myself. Again, it's square to Uranus, right? That cross purposes where Uranus is like, okay, well, when you turn that corner, you're going to see the storm right in front of you, and it's going to be time to shelter yourself from it. So, and it's not to say these things are good or bad. It's just they're cross purposes, and we have to grow and change as leaning into it. Otherwise, especially with a fixed square of Leo and Taurus, fire and earth, we really stand to light some things on fire if we're not careful. And this is going to really just sum up the weekend at this point with this square. Okay, so that is a lot to talk about. Now, I will give you some very basic, very, very basic information about what's coming in the next 2 weeks, okay? Because we're together every day, and we're doing the astrology every day, and it changes as much as we're changing, right? And so, but I will give you some insight on what to expect coming up to this full moon that I talked about. Number one, like I said, so Mercury in Cancer is going to be in a trine to Jupiter, right? So Mercury in Cancer in a trine to Jupiter in Pisces. And so we are going to, even an awareness of our abundance, a conceptual awareness of our abundance and where we belong, where we're faithful and loyal to what protects us and who we protect, is very much stable with where Jupiter is in Pisces, right? That's expanding on the actual collective experience. So these two things are really going to stabilize our higher mind, right? Because Jupiter rules Sagittarius, the opposite sign of Mercury. So we're talking about a very balanced position of support between our knowledge and our understanding, our nervous system and our higher mind. Venus comes into a conjunction with Mars. We talked about that. The Sun is going in late Cancer is going to be in a trine to Neptune. Keep that in mind because the moon is going to be in a trine to Neptune this weekend after the full moon. So the sun will come around and it'll be illuminated, and we'll express ourselves through this connection later in the week. Chiron stations retrograde. We talked about that. The sun opposite Pluto. Now you can see this pattern here that the moon is going to cross all these points over the weekend in Cancer that the sun is then going to follow up with in our expression. So pay attention to how you feel, because that's going to really characterize how you express yourself when the sun comes along and creates these same things. The trine to Neptune, the opposition to Pluto. Mercury is also going to square Chiron. So you can see all of these like concentric circles and these patterns that mirror each other as these transits move forward. So Mercury in conjunction with Sirius is going to square Chiron. This time it's going to be retrograde. And so this is going to be much more in our nervous system, in our minds, and our knowledge, and our conceptualization of where we belong and what constitutes our familial matrix and where we feel safe. Venus will come into Virgo, and this is when we take all of that passion and creative expression and really start to condition ourselves in a very material way. And the value, the value that we place upon our training, our education, and our purification is going to really increase. This is an important time. Venus and then immediately comes into an opposition to Jupiter, right? And so this value is, pulling on Jupiter that's just endlessly expanding in this realm of the collective unconscious and the transcendental reality. So we're really going to feel the difference here in terms of our palpable material reality, our actual relationships, and then Jupiter in its retrograde in Pisces. And then from there, we have a full moon. 2 degrees Leo, 2 degrees Aquarius. And again, it's going to be an infectious spread of what, the blood rushing through the body. The blood rushes to the head and then it spreads throughout the entire body. And that expression is, and the illumination is going to show us fully what it is that we need to let go of and what it is we need to embrace when it comes to that unexpected thunderstorm. There is unexpected, but we can expect it, right? We can expect it because we are familiar with the astrology. We know what the full moon is going to encompass. So, all right, my friends, I think that is going to do it for today. That is the astrology for the new moon, the weekend, and the major transits leading up to the full moon. So I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Really take advantage of some time with the family, whatever that means to you, the places where you feel safe, secure, and like yourself. Embrace the stillness, embrace that silence, embrace the calm, be very clear with yourself about your intention setting with this new moon. What is it that you want to be made sacred within you? And that will grow over the course of this lunar cycle. And we will be back together on Monday for the Daily Medicine transmission. If you're interested in a reading, booking a reading, understanding your starseed origins, energy work, you can book through catalystenergies.net. That's in the description box below. And also, if you want to stay connected on social media, you can find Catalyst Energies on Telegram and on Facebook. That's also linked from the description box below. It's great to have these conversations. I love Telegram Instagram for its chat function. People are starting to get a little bit more, and I am too, like in more of a conversation, and I really value and appreciate that. And yeah, have a great weekend. I love you guys. I appreciate each and every one of you. Please take care of yourself, and we'll be together on Monday.